thank you very much for people who've signed up and come along. I'm starting to see some familiar names, so this will probably be the third or fourth time some people will have heard this introduction, but this is day 2 of our Learn and Redefined conference, and this is our first ever online conference, and we really want to celebrate teaching and learning. I'm Graham Trick. I'm the learning specialist here at Showbie. For those who've not come to one of the workshops before this week, we are a hybrid learning platform that have got over 3 million users globally. And our aim is to provide richer, deeper, more personalized feedback and be able to make that assessment with technology a lot easier. It's something we've been doing for the last 10 years and we're really, really proud of it. If you want to find out more, visit showbie.com. During the presentation, please use the Q&A feature within Zoom and we'll aim to answer those at the end. For now, I'd like to welcome Greg, who's going to be leading the session where we're going to explore the use of technology in science. So thank you very much, Greg. Over to you.
Thanks, Graham. So morning, everyone. So my name is Greg Hughes. I'm just going to enable my slides. I'm going to run through some stuff. Feel free to, fire away any questions that you got for Graham. And a big thank you to Graham and to Showbie for asking me today. So we've been using Showbie for pretty much as long as it's been around now, which I'm really pleased about. So what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit, not just about Showbie, but about lots of other things that you can do with technology in science lessons. And some of this is what we've been sharing with PGC students at places like the University of Nottingham and our own science faculty across the Trust secondary schools. So I thought before we start a little bit about me, and that there's a reason for this. So here's my quick summary and my contact if you want to get in touch. So I've been teaching physics for 32 years continuously, mostly A-level, GCSE. But, I've done lots of things with IT, but the bottom one is interesting because I never had an IT lesson in my entire life. I left school before we even did it, really, apart from a bit of computing. So I pretty much had to teach myself. And for me, that's really good because it means that everything I do and I try and get our staff to do, I have to do it myself. So I have to prove it works to me and be convinced it's worthwhile before I go on and encourage people to use it. So I think that's nice. There's an authenticity there and a practicality. So my main role, I'm vice principal at the Ferrers Academy in Burton-on-Trent, slap bang in the Midlands, where you can see it's the home of Marmite and Branston Pickle. Yeah, that's about probably it, pretty much. I'm also trust leader for digital strategy, so I help coordinate how we use learning technologies, remote learning things across all of our trust schools. And just very briefly, in sort of 20 seconds, we're big. So one of the largest schools in the UK. We're currently about 2,350 students, nearly 300 staff, and I think by September we'll be like 2,500 students over. And we're across 3 sites, so this is interesting for us. So we have a year 7 and 8 site, a year 9 to 11 site, and a year 12 and 13 site. Every kid in year 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 has their own iPad as part of the one-to-one program we've been doing for about 9 years now, and that's expanded to 7 and 8 in September, where we've already got some PP students and SEN students with them, but it will be everyone. So that's us in a nutshell. And I just want to start with a quote because everyone likes quotes, and this is one of my favorites by one of my big heroes, Carl Sagan. He said, "You make the world significant by the courage of your questions and the depth of your answers to them." So we've tried to really jump in and embrace technology and go back and ask some of the questions as why do we do that? It's just because we've always done it. Can we challenge that? Can we go back to those principles and see can we do it differently? And that's sort of led the way we do it. So I'm going to use that today as our sort of guide, if you like, through technology. And a lot of the stuff that I'm going to sort of share with you, and it's admittedly very brief because we haven't got a lot of time. For me, there's 4 key areas where you probably want to use your technology best. So one of them is the obvious one, which is data collection and analysis. So like a lot of people, I've spent years fiddling with data collection and stuff, and it doesn't always work very well. Some of it's a bit clunky, a bit slow. What we love is the iPad has got a lot of things built in. So it's got a 3-axis magnetometer, 3-axis accelerometer built in. And there are some apps I might have time to show you at the end that actually unlock those. And you can also use it as a light meter, as a sound meter. And I'll share a little bit of that with you. So it's a very powerful tool for collecting data firsthand, and then for analyzing it with things like numbers with spreadsheets. And we'll show you a little bit of that if you've not seen it. Secondly, I love the fact that you can use the iPad and technology to model. So a really powerful thing in science is looking at why kids think things happen. And we know that often, particularly bright students, will get 10 out of 10, they'll get the answer right, but they may not actually understand what is happening or why that's the answer. They've just learned it because they're clever. So if you can use tools, particularly visual ones, to see, how they relate concepts to each other, that's really powerful. So being able to draw and get very tactile with things and get them to, what does that look like? Sketch a diagram. I find that incredibly powerful to see what's going on. Third use is the obvious one and a big one we've done at the Ferrers, which is assessment for learning. So can we use various apps, tools to, collect work from students, to provide effective feedback when we need to, maybe to use that diagnostically. And obviously this is where things like Showbie are so powerful, because the ability to have that rapid turnaround in digital workflow, but also to provide very rich audio feedback, even on a diagram, to put little audio feedback. This bit of the graph's great. This is wrong because you've said this, and it should look like this. And that's really powerful and can save a lot of time. And then the fourth one, again, is quite an obvious one. It's just very rich resources. So I'll show you some of the ones that we've been creating as a school and as a trust, and the ability to have those, accessible all the time. Whereas I remember when I was at school, we had a textbook in school. You weren't allowed to take it home. It was very boring. There was like 4 pictures in it, something like that, diagrams. It just wasn't nice. It wasn't friendly, and it, most of the time you're reliant on what you could remember the teacher has said, which isn't a good situation. It's not how real life would work. So I'm going to share a little bit of some of those. Like I say, we'll go through fairly breakneck, just because we're short of time. But then you're welcome. If you want to use my contacts, I'll put them up again at the end. Please reach out, and I'll gladly, share some of this with you. So here's a really obvious one. So this is called the Microscope. And there's lots of other versions available, but this is like a digital microscope that we've been using a bit. So basically your device, like your iPad, fits in, and it's got its own little built-in zoom, which links to the camera on the device, and a lens. So you can see these are some students going around just the school grounds, photographing all manner of insects. My biology is not very good, but even I know what this is. So here's a little bug. It's walking around the screen. We've got a scale that we figured out. And, with a little bit of applying stuff, you could start to estimate, say, the speed of movement of that bug. And then you could scale that up. How long would it take to walk to Nottingham or wherever, for example? So, this adds another dimension to just, here's a picture of a bug. Well, here's a moving one. Can we measure more about it? So this idea of real life context, we know from some of the research projects we do, it's a really good way, particularly in science and STEM, to engage people's interest, to look at the contextual relationships between things. So I've been doing a lot lately with National Geographic as one of their educators, and again the ability to relate the natural world and the human world and the way things interlink is incredibly powerful there. So here's another one. Again, this is with a digital microscope that just clips onto your device. So this is a copper wire silver solution. And you can see this is slightly sped up by about a factor of 10, but over several minutes, you can grow silver nitrate crystals. And again, we can put a scale on. So as well as seeing it and saying, oh, that's nice, we can start to get a measurement of the rate at which those crystals are growing. Is it accelerating, in vertically, horizontally? So we can look at the rates of these things as well with quite simple setups. This is just a little, flat dish with the liquid in and the microscope on top of it. So this is probably a little bit more conventional. So we do this an awful lot. And it's interesting because students actually aren't very good at spreadsheets anymore. They're, a lot of them haven't done as much in IT. But this is a simple, lower school experiment. So mass and extension of a spring, but then being able to put that into a graph. And the big advantage sat in front of me is a piece of graph paper, okay? And one of my real annoyances is the fact that, 33 years ago, I did my astrophysics degree and I was using digital data analysis stuff. I stopped using graph paper. So why on earth we're still doing it in school 30 odd years later is, a mystery, because no one in the world of science ever uses graph paper. It's all, spreadsheets and computer analysis. So really, we should be doing a lot more of this in school to prepare students for, careers and work in those fields. We do them a disservice by keeping it paper-based. Obviously, they've got to learn to do a graph. So this you can see, it's quite straightforward, but the big advantage for us is that not only can students, get the data, plot the graph instantly. If your graph is looking like there are anomalies there or big gaps where the data is missing, you can immediately go and correct that, put them in, and it will replot the graph instantly. So it massively speeds up the time it takes to do the experiment, so you can do it in more depth. You can do more of the critical analysis of the data that you really want them to do as they get older, that we often don't have time to do in class, because it's get some results, pack it away, so I love the fact that you can bring in a lot of this curve fitting and what it actually means and calculating stuff a lot earlier with students. So this is just done in the Numbers app on an iPad. And here's the same thing with an A-level lesson. So this is like a trebuchet, one of those things you see in Game of Thrones that chucks big rocks at castles and things like that. And there's quite a few virtual simulations on the internet. So you can see one on the sort of lower right. You can configure various things, but ultimately you can measure, the range, how high it goes. So with the A-level groups, what we were doing in physics was modeling how far this thing actually goes in real life compared to, what the theoretical mathematical models predict. And again, this is just numbers, but they've been able to do some really nice curve fit into that, plot several graphs. And although this is a virtual experiment, it's very difficult to do it for real, it applies the same sort of techniques. They're just able to do it quicker and in more depth and talk about some of the power laws and things a lot better. So I really like this. I think it's just such a crucial part of what we do. So as we expand our one-to-one next year, what we're doing is more of this integration of these digital skills into all lessons, particularly science and STEM subjects. So I mean, that bit's quite easy. I will just show you, if Graham doesn't mind, let me dip out and I'll do this live while I've got it. So this is one of my folders of science apps. And you can see there's one here called data collection that I'm sort of trying to wiggle a little bit. There you go. If I open it, I think it's still free. Fortunately, it gets sideways on my iPad. There we go. So what I've now got is it's unlocked the sensors in the iPad. So you can see there's an accelerometer there. There's a gyroscope. If I start to move it around in front of me, okay, you can see all these things change. So suddenly you've got the ability to measure, but also to record what this data is actually doing, which is really powerful. And that's a free app. So there's loads of these that we'll look at, some, like I say, that do sound and other things in a bit. But being able to use those is a great way to do that sort of data collection. So in terms of the modeling, I'll share a few of my favorites with you. This is one, I love this. This is a free app. It's called Wind Tunnel Light. And it creates virtual wind tunnels, the sort of thing you would have paid tens of thousands of pounds to do, 10 years ago. And so very few schools could even afford it. But what I love about it is students can draw shapes. So they can draw a car like this, and they can see where the pressure points are and where there is a lot of turbulence in this case. But it also measures, and I hate to think what the computational calculation looks like, but it estimates the drag and the lift on things. So, rather than just saying, hey kids, can you draw a nice streamlined car? That looks great. What you can actually do is say, can you design a car and make sure that the lift is below this and the drag is below a certain factor? And if it's not, okay, well, you go back and you redo it. So you can very much start to get them to think about prototyping and rapid turnaround from feedback. And ultimately you're looking at some of the things that like Tesla and SpaceX do as a matter of course. So it really changes the whole approach to things like DT in science when you can start to employ these tools. So, I love this because it brings, the creative side of how students draw to the design side, to the science explanation of it, but you get immediate quantitative data that you can pull out. So, this is a brilliant activity, and I've done this with very able students, with very, very weak students, and they love it. They get a lot out of it about why we fit, those things at the front of lorries and things on the motorways. So again, it's a great tool, I think, to model what drag is and how it actually works. This is another one. I found this app called Exoplanet, which I think is free, but you've got to pay for the enhanced bits. So it's an app that looks at extrasolar planets and all the thousands discovered, but it allows you to start graphing things. So you can look at correlations between how close are these planets to their star and, what the temperature might be. Or is their mass linked to whether they're near or far from the host star, and the reasons for that, the way that solar systems form. So it's a really good way to get students to extrapolate data. But then you've got a modeling bit where it plots every mapped planet across the galaxy, and you can then zoom in and out. So what you get is a nice 3D simulation of how these things are related, which is really hard to get from a book. So you can see I'm rotating it here, and you've got an idea of the local galaxy group and where they're centered, where they're not. So I really loved it. This is what a lot of my degree was in. So I'm particularly fond of stuff like this. But again, even getting a good idea of the orientation of the Milky Way and why that causes it to look like it does. So I think these sort of tools for helping to model, what space is are really useful for kids. The other thing that we do a lot, and again, I'll just flip out my slides quickly to show you this. If I bring up another app, and there's loads like this, but there's one I use called EduCreations. So you can see it sort of here. And it's basically like a free whiteboard app, okay? So it just turns your iPad into like a note-taking device, okay? So you can see there's some sixth form stuff I was doing. But what it means you can easily do is, you can draw on it. So I would often with younger students say, okay, can you draw solid, liquid and gas? So I did this years ago with some head teachers, and a head teacher literally said, solid, they're little star shapes. Liquid, well, they're circles, but gases, they're squares. And I thought, he was joking, but he wasn't. He really thought particles were all different shapes in different phases. And it tells me that this head teacher knows literally nothing about science or atoms or very basic stuff. So straight away, just handing that iPad round and getting him to draw what he thinks, you can start to model what's going on in his head. It's quite bizarre in this case. So I think, there's loads of those sort of tools where you can bring them in and you can really start to draw out, the way students relate concepts and see them, which is a big part of helping them understand science, but also addressing misconceptions. And, you have to drag these misconceptions into the light, show why they're wrong, and then, beat them into a, more correct version where necessary. So the third one is pretty obvious. I thought I'd just, as a quick film of some of my Showbie classes. So you can see that, we like to organize things in folders by topic. They're color coded. We've also got loads of, document links and revision tools and things like that. And then within those folders, you just have a whole series of assignments. So this is one of the year 11 classes. You see a lot of the remote work going right back. And then, I'm sorry, I've sort of blocked their names out just for data protection. But you can see like a typical lesson, what we might have is, here's the links to the video that we're doing. Here's some exam questions. Here's some maybe online study tasks in Seneca, or, here's an online exit ticket that we're doing asynchronously using Kahoot or Quizlet or whatever. So what we love is you've got the ability to get a really nice lesson here and link lots of things together, to build up an online lesson if necessary, or even a live lesson. So I would pretty much do the same thing with my science groups in school as I would if they're out of school using stuff like this. So a lot of the quizzes we might do live in the lesson as an entrance or exit ticket, we would do self-paced. Okay, so this is great from the feedback point of view. We can then look at work and market. One of the things we found as well is there's loads of great ways to be a bit more creative in science. And I think the trick is always the balance between, what's creative and fun, but, maybe not that critical to improving their understanding, and what actually is a really good insight into what they're doing. So for example, if you get kids to make a podcast or a stop motion of something, but, write a script and rewrite it and then explain how it works, and don't let them copy it from Wikipedia. So you phrase the question so they can't. It's a really good way to see, actually, do they understand what they're talking about? Or are they, going off on one and it's just not? So for me, loads of these ideas, if you can build on them, are great ways to demonstrate their understanding and to assess it and test it. So I'll show you a few quick more. So this is done in Keynote on an iPad. This is just like a workbook like you might have on paper, but what we've done is lock it down. So the kids can put their name in, they can add a picture or some audio to explain something. I think on the next slide, they can do some drawing on the standard alpha, beta, gamma type of thing, but they can't delete it. They can't edit the template. So in effect, what you're doing is it's like a workbook, but you're guiding them to use certain bits, and you're also allowing them more multimedia input. So if they're struggling with handwriting or anything like that, you can, wallop it in. So we're starting to do a lot of those, and it's something we're going to do a lot more with the younger students. And I think for me, a lot of it really centers around this. So this is our learning cycle. And if you're interested, this stuff is free on our website. We don't get commission or anything. But a lot of what we do, we have a 4-part sort of learning cycle, a bit like teaching backwards. So we have a do now phase where we do a sort of starter task, and we want to really get them thinking about what they did last time, and maybe some retrieval practice stuff. And then we might do it like an I do it, we model it, and they sort of copy, and we check they can do it. Then we've got a you do phase, which is like the demonstrate, where the students actually do the heavy part of showing what they've got. And then finally we get into this sort of reflective plenary type of stage. So a lot of the science stuff we do really, I think, relates quite well to that. So I'm just going to quickly, I'll skip some of these because I'm short of a few things, a few minutes time. I want to just look at STEM. So I was looking at the TPAT model, which sort of links technology, pedagogy, content. And it struck me that, if you're doing STEM, if you want to really engage students, then the 3 sort of pillars, I guess, one is the real world context, because that really gets students engaged and piques their curiosity. One is the idea of getting them to do real world problem solving. So to bring in real issues of, how you're going to feed a country where there's a lot of famine or big issues with drought. And the third one is the digital tools can really enable it. So we did a big project called Girls into Global STEM, where we looked at things like water production and carrying water to countries. And the students started to look at, could drones do it? So they got into coding. And we found it really engaged them because they had immediate real world problems to solve, and it brought in digital tools, and it was quite exciting, cutting edge. And we had a lot of co-teaching of year 10 with year 8, and the books are free again on Ibooks if you're interested. But this model really worked well. And then I think, to me, the idea of collaboration, creativity, and sort of literacy, numeracy, bind it all together. So you can do a lot with models like this to really then go back and reflect on the sort of lessons you're doing. So as a trust, what we're doing at the moment, so this is an example for science, is trying to build up these digital skills to bring that STEM stuff in. So, here's some examples from our curriculum of where we might do more data analysis or more problem solving, or how we might look at, online safety and digital communication, things like that. And you can see some of the creative ones, like, making a podcast or producing your own animation with overlays and voiceover to explain it, are really simple to do now. It's very easy, very little skill in it, but you can encourage students to keep redoing it, to do it better, to make it more precise in the language they use. And that, for me, is what sort of improves the science of it, really. And I'll just quickly share a few more examples, and I'll show up and do some questions. So here's a great one we do with A-level. So we do some work on resonance. We link it, you can see, to lots of stuff on the artistic side or the engineering side of instruments. But in essence, they do the party trick with the wine glass. So this is an app called Bismarck that you can find. And essentially, it's just turning your microphone into a frequency analyzer. So you can see it's peaking at certain frequencies where it's resonating. And as I change the volume of water in the glass, it will peak at different amounts. And there's a correlation between the volume of water and the sort of peak fundamental frequencies it makes. So immediately you've got a really nice, quite complex potentially investigation there. You could do it with violins or with instruments using a $1.99 app. That's available. And previously, the last school I was at 15 years ago, we'd have spent hundreds of pounds trying to buy a bit of equipment to do that, and it would do one kid. So there is a little bit of a thing on the Apple website if you're interested on this sort of stuff. I can share the link, but it's great and really easy to do. Another nice topic for STEM sort of stuff is to look at things like everyday transport. So I was lucky enough a few times to go and do a load of STEM work, and I've had work in Hong Kong. And so, Hong Kong's really rich visually. It's a brilliant place. But you can do things like, use some of these apps. So this is Vernier Video Physics. And it allows you to, plot points on a video of things moving. And then it turns those points into X, Y data. So therefore you can work out, speeds, velocities, acceleration rates, and so on. So it's really nice. And again, I think a lot of the advice on this, I'll sort of finish off in a minute, it's just all that bit about the global dimension, the big picture, problem solving. I think, if you can do that with technology, the kids are going to absolutely love it, be engaged, want to understand it better. And then your trick as the teacher is to bring that critical look at what they're doing, to make sure it's adding layers onto what you would normally do without the technology, I think. So if you're interested, there are some books we've got out there. They're all free. So there's the global STEM one that we did. There's also one from Poland, Cyprus, and Sweden, our Erasmus partners. A lot of the iPad stuff, you know, our books are out there. Also, if you go to deferrers.com/ebooks, there are loads of books there that we've created. So the orange ones are science, blue is maths, I think English is yellowy or something. They're all free. If you've got an iPad, iPhone, you know, Mac or something, you can download all of them. But a lot of them focus on misconceptions and using audio, video, and animation, particularly to try and explain tricky concepts that kids don't often get, like the link between, you know, half-life graphs and what particles are doing and that sort of stuff. So, you know, we're hoping to do more of those the next couple of years. But again, if you want them, feel free. And that's it. I'm going to shut up, Graham, at this point. I'll leave my contact details on. And I don't know if anyone's got any questions. Are you able to read them out, Graham?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much. I mean, I always enjoy listening to your presentations. There's always a purposeful app that I pick up that I've never come across before. And that kind of links into the first question. As a science department, how do you evaluate these apps to make sure that actually there is a purpose behind them? And it would be great to share that experience.
So I think it's not so much is there a purpose behind the app, because every app you can use it with purpose or not in a way. So I think it's sometimes where is there a need, like we want to do this is what we really need to improve it. So then is there an app or an approach we can do to improve that? Or, you know, sometimes it's just looking even at what other faculties do. So like French have got really good at giving audio feedback all over the place in diagrams and charts, you know, so applying that to science then is a really good idea, because kids have got a diagram of a nuclear power station. You want to start knowing what the bits do. You know, they can write it out, but it's quite a linear thing. It doesn't link. So if you get them to start explaining with audio on the key parts of the diagram, you know, their brain is matching the visual to the audio. You know, you can get sort of dual coding type of processing going on potentially. So I think, yeah, we have people who are quite experienced in each faculty, so they often suggest stuff. You know, I'm quite free. We don't make them do it. So I showed you a list of ideas, but that's just, you know, a lot of the ones I've got and a few other people came up with. If they want to do different stuff, you know, that's fine. But yeah, we would look at, you know, how it's being benefited by, you know, a brief skim through things like schemes for learning. You know, we do evaluations and surveys, so we know what sort of tools, like a lot of staff will use, you know, nearly everyone's using Showbie. We know Nearpod gets a lot of use because Nearpod's got some great stuff for visual, you know, you've got like a visual slate you can put up and see what every kid's drawn at the same time. So those sort of tools always get a lot of use. Even, you know, down to things like Quizlet and Kahoot. Kahoot is great fun and a lot of people do it. But if you do Kahoot with, say, a weaker ability class and you do it at the start and the end, they get so much better at the end because they go slower and you can see them thinking about the answer more and rather than just rushing. And then it really helps to embed some of those key points and they remember it more, you know, so they're retaining more information. So rather than viewing that as a throwaway, you know, sometimes it's you know, the app can be good or bad, but it's how you embed it and use it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think there's loads of apps. Some of them, you know, you want to say, look, this is a great app. It will allow you to do this experiment quicker, faster, go and use it. Other times it's, well, you know, think about how MFL is using Nearpod or Showbie, and can you use that approach? Or this is what P do and it works really well. Maybe we can adapt that. And then it's having those dialogues with those faculties, I think.
Yeah, and we've just had a question come off the back of, I think it's off the back of the interest around quizzing. I think somebody's picked up and noticed that little Socrative sign. And it's just how do you use Socrative within your faculty? That would be great.
Yeah, so we're lucky we've got Showbie Pro. So it means that when people set up a Showbie class, we can immediately embed Socrative quizzes in it, and it will pull in the kids' names and it will send their marks and their marked scripts back. So, you know, we've used Socrative for like 10 years and we've always loved it. But, you know, if a kid called themselves Darth Vader, it was Darth Vader and that was it. So I think now by embedding it in Showbie, you know, you just get such a nice, powerful platform. So we use, I mean, I think I can probably go back and it's probably that slide, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a nice chart you'll see if I zoom in a bit. This is all on our website and it's free. Please feel free to take it. All of those apps do slightly different things, and even the ones that look the same, have different things they do. Like Quizlet's great for kids moving around the class, non-COVID. So I think it's part of teachers having a toolkit, isn't it, of what's useful, what works, what doesn't work. You know, where might Quizlet work best for your class or your subject, whereas Kahoot might be, you know, the best thing for another. And then, you know, getting people to jumble up a little bit so they don't get bored. So yeah, so we, you know, Socrative is really good for analysing the data a lot, particularly if you embed it within Showbie. So we use that a lot to get quite formative data. If it's more like retrieval practice type of stuff, we probably use Quizlet and Kahoot a bit more. Because again, there's some really, and you get a lot of whole class feedback comes out of that. So you can see that 80% get this question wrong, and here's probably why. And so, you know, they're really good for doing at the end and picking up, have they understood it? Have they got any whole class misconceptions that then we want to go and amend next week?
Yeah, absolutely. And just picking up on that, where you're talking about that great practice and that that sort of culture to explore amongst your staff, do you build time into faculty meetings and staff meetings to be able to share? And it would be great to describe that kind of process that you've developed.
Yeah, so we do. So we finish a bit earlier now on a Thursday. So every Thursday, like Monday is our sort of meeting nights, and they're like a lot of schools, there's a cycle of, you know, is it heads of faculties meeting with their teams? Is it leadership team meeting with heads of, you know, faculties or whatever's going on? Is it more to do with pastoral teams? But on a Thursday, we have an hour every week of dedicated CPD time for faculties that's theirs to manage. So, you know, we don't go and take it off them and say, can you do all this, please? So if they want to, you know, get myself or some of our teams in to do, you know, how does, you know, this app work in geography, then we'll go and do half an hour on that. Or if we want to look at, you know, Neopod and using the wind tunnel app in DT, you know, we'll get invited in and go and do that. So that gives them some ownership of what they feel they need. And that might be linked to some of the, you know, the surveys of CPD that we do. Also, as a trust, we're doing a lot now with online platforms. So we have like a CPD portal that my colleague Andy, our Vice Principal Teaching and Learning, has been building. So Andy's doing a lot of really good pedagogy stuff with, you know, little summaries, some links, some videos to watch, and then a self-marking quiz. And then I will mirror that with the technology. So if Andy does one on retrieval practice, I'll then say, well, okay, here's now how you do that even better with Quizlet or Kahoot and same sort of stuff. And that means that people can dip into that anytime. If new staff join, you know, they can just watch those. So we're really excited about that. That's launching very soon. And we've been doing some work on that.
Yeah, and there's been quite a bit of interest around your ebooks. So just asking where you can download them, because they're available in a really good bookstore.
So yeah, I can show you if that's okay, Graham. I know it's always been Halloween showing stuff live, isn't it? So if I go to, so this is iBooks on the iPad. Unfortunately, they're nearly all iPad specific. But type in my name, for example, because I know some will come up. Then you can see that, you know, here's one on, say, the Big Bang Theory. Here's one on heat energy. So let's open that. So all the books look similar. You know, we did a lot of branding stuff. So a lot of them have been built with students at Nottingham, which is great. So what they've got is obviously, you know, built-in self-marking quizzes. So people can check if they're right or not. Oh, I'm randomly picking these without even reading, getting them all. There you go. So it'll tell you if you're right or wrong. Got some nice little, you know, pictures with some pop-ups in. But what's really cool is you've got videos in. So, you know, here's a little video that you can play. It's got my bad voiceover. You can see, you know,
so as we watch this video,
we've got the graph side by side with what's happening with the melting ice. So that helps, I think, model the ideas. I'm just skimming through it quickly. I mean, you get the idea anyway. So there's a lot of, you know, they're quite nicely put together, but there's a lot of stuff in it, and they're all, you know, for me, the key bits are like the animation. So like the maths one looks at transformations, and it's a subject students struggle with. So to be able to do that, I think with an animation is really cool. So if you want them, you can get them from our website at deferrers.com/ebooks, or you can go onto the iBook store and just, you know, type in Ferrers Academy or my name, and some will start coming up, and then, you know, you'll see all the others. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that answers the final question that's come in. Are these books available in India? So if they're not available on the
if they weren't available in Hong Kong, and I think I shoved them all in a Dropbox folder. So yeah, if you're really interested, drop me a line, and probably what I can do is, you know, I can try and find the folder, and I'll just share that with you. So there's my my contacts again. Yeah, they're all free. I think they're on most iBook stores around the world, but yeah, I know that there's a couple where, for whatever reason, some books aren't allowed to be as easy to download. So
yeah, no, that's great, and I think all of the questions have been answered. So it's just an opportunity to say thank you for giving up your time, because fortunately there's a GCSE exam that's scheduled in at just the right time for us.
yeah,
so no, really appreciate it, and sharing your experiences and how you're using technology in science is been fantastic. So thanks again for giving up the time. And for everyone who's joined us, this will be this recording will go onto our social media platform, so you'll be able to look back. Obviously, pause it when you want to get those little app names that Greg shared there. We've got sessions later on today looking at Explain Everything. We've also got panel sessions and a staff room for a networking opportunity around about 6 p.m. on the UK time. So thank you very much for everybody for coming along, and we'll see you at some point in the future. So thanks a lot, Greg.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Graham. Take care, everyone. Bye.